is it possible to rent an apartment and then rent it again to somebody else on Airbnb or VRBO? It is, and we're going to speak about it today in Airbnb Arbitrage. If you're new here, my name is Dibugnara, and over the last 20 years, I've been buying real estate and lending money on real estate for all types of properties. But I'm not here to sell you on me. I'm here to tell you how I did it. Over the last few years, I've amassed a short-term or Airbnb portfolio worth over $20 million. With that, it's allowed me to retire younger, replace my income from other ventures with all short-term rental income, and travel all over and even own properties in other countries. So what is Airbnb rental arbitrage? Let me give you the definition. This is the act of renting a property long-term on a 1-year or longer lease, and then re-renting it short-term on sites like Airbnb or VRBO. The idea is to make more daily and or weekly than you're paying monthly without a lot of risk because you don't own it. So how is this legal, or how could you make it work? So first, it is legal as long as the owner of the home or the building signs a rental arbitrage contract with the renter and they have a proper permit for short-term rentals that are required. So what does this mean? So to be legally correct in doing it. Now, some people are just going to do it. They're going to go rogue. They're going to put the apartment up and hope nobody notices. That's an option, but I don't think that's a long-term business strategy to scale it. You can get a rental arbitrage agreement, and you can go on any rental legal website at this point and download one and present it to a landlord to have it done. It costs you $20 to get the agreement. You can get a rental arbitrage agreement where the landlord is agreeing with you to rent the party, to sublet the apartment out to other people for short-term rentals. The other thing you're always going to want to check is every single city, zip code, or municipality usually has some kind of short-term rental laws. For instance, Miami Beach and New York City really don't allow short-term rentals at all. So if you're going to look for an apartment in New York City, if it's up, it's because the building probably is acting as either a condotel or they have some kind of rules that allow short-term rentals. That's the only time you're going to ever see that in New York City and Miami and places like that, because they're trying to protect the hotel business. Every single zip code and municipality has some sort of short-term rental law. So it's important that you check and understand what that is. A lot of times, if there is a policy in place, you just need to get a permit. That permit's going to have to be signed off by the owner, and it's going to probably cost you between $200 and $300. What I usually do for my properties that I own is that I go to local municipalities before I buy them and find out what their short-term rental laws are, so I know going in if I'm going to have any issues. There was just a new law put in Atlanta, for instance, that to be able to rent your property on those platforms, because they were having problems with a lot of parties, you have to own the property and you have to live in the property. So you can rent it short-term to other people, but you have to own it. So it's just something to kind of look out for if you're going to do this. So number one is a rental arbitrage agreement. And number two, making sure that with the local municipalities that short-term rentals are even allowed. So that's the way you could do it first. Secondly, how successfully can you pull this off? This is what I suggest. If you want to be a rental arbitrage Airbnb master, this is how I suggest you do it. First, the bigger the house or the apartment, the better chance you have of profiting. According to AirDNA, so I use a site called airdna.co for all my short-term rental statistics, and it'll actually give you by zip code where properties are renting for, what the average daily rent is, what the average monthly revenue is, and how often they are occupied. So airdna.co is the site I use for a lot of this stuff. According to them, the profit on these types of properties goes from 50% to 140% when comparing a 1-bedroom rental to anything above 3 bedrooms. So if you can get a bigger apartment that's 3 bedrooms or more, which is harder, your profit could triple from 50% to up to 140%. So the larger the apartment, the better. So if you're going to go for this, I would suggest trying to get a larger apartment to rent out. So that's kind of first the thing. After seeing if it's legal, that's what you look at next. Next, have a set schedule. Whether you're renting 1 day a week or 30 days a month, it has to be consistent so you can determine what your actual costs are compared to what you can earn. So this is with anything with Airbnb, and this is if you own it or rent it, but you're going to have a consistent schedule, because when you're putting your available dates up on these platforms, whether it's Airbnb, VRBO, Peerspace, Furnish Finders, whatever it is, you have to have a set schedule up there so you can really determine, hey, I'm renting the property for 10 days a month. This is what my electric bill is. This is what my cable bill is. The cleaning fees are passed through, but this is what's costing me additionally to rent my property. So without a set schedule or knowing how much it's costing you daily, it's hard to know if you're actually making money or not. So it's important that you have a set schedule and that people are able to book dates for your property in advance because of your set schedule. And this really should include the cost of you staying somewhere else. You're a renter, right? And this isn't an investment property for you. If you're renting your property to somebody else, where are you staying? And is there a cost associated with this? Because if there's a cost associated with it, you have to assume that in your cost. And furthermore, what are utilities costing for the apartment that you're renting? And what are they costing for the place you're staying at in case you have to stay someplace else? So these are all things that you want to factor in if you're going to be profitable on a rental arbitrage property. Lastly, don't forget about risk, right? This is where you have to kind of determine what your tolerance for risk is when doing these properties. The biggest risk I see besides for insurance is there's a lot more Airbnb units than there have been in the past. What happened during COVID after there was a dip because people weren't allowed to Airbnb, now there's a huge increase of property. So when numbers came out last quarter, there was a higher occupancy vacancy than there had been in the last 2 years, meaning there was more empty Airbnbs than there had been since 2019. Occupancy for Airbnbs is actually up. So there's more people using Airbnb than ever, but there's more vacancies. So why is that? Because there's a lot more properties. Over the last couple of years, a lot more people have gotten turned on to it, especially with vacation becoming, a part of your work, a part of your school. People like to work and live different places. They don't have to live in the same place all the time because we're all on Zoom meetings, right? So there are a lot more places. So my suggestion, whether you're buying or renting or whatever you're doing, is that there has to be something unique about your property to get people to stay there. If you're just, a Holiday Inn or a Days Inn next to a million other Holiday Inns or Days Inn, it's very, very hard to determine if you're going to be able to book and be profitable. But if there's something special about your property, whether it's the actual property itself that has great views, it has a gym in the building, it has a gym around the block that's close, it has a pool, whatever it is, right? There has to be something special about your property. There has to be certain amenities. If there are no amenities in your property that make it special, then what are the amenities of the area? So what do I mean by that? Are there beaches? Are there lakes? Are there ski mountains? Are there historical downtowns? Are there wineries? Are there anything that's going to attract people to the area that's not just your apartment or your house, whatever you're renting to somebody else? So if you're going to lower your risk, there has to be something specific about that property that makes people want to go there besides just another place to stay, right? These are the recommendations for me, whether you own or rent the property. But I believe that rental arbitrage can be a strategy that's useful under the right circumstances. And again, my suggestion would be to have a landlord sign off on it and to make sure that you have the short-term rental permit so you don't run into the issues like that. Because one problem that comes from either a fine because you didn't have the right permitting could wipe out all your profits. And the other thing is, if the landlord's not on board and they get Airbnb involved, you could be, or VRBO, you could be banned from the platforms for good. So that's something you don't want to do either. So those are the two things I would suggest. Both platforms, Airbnb and VRBO, provide the owner of the home additional insurance on top of their regular insurance. So you can speak to them about that and you can get the information to the landlord. But those are the things that I think can make this a successful and profitable Airbnb or VRBO rental arbitrage property. Happy hunting, everybody.